All right, welcome everybody to this session of Performance Analytics Office Hours. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a great day, whether you're at the beginning of it or at the end of it. My name is Tom Pasek. I'm a technical product marketing manager here at ServiceNow. I'm going to run through a couple logistical items for folks who haven't joined us in the past or maybe need a refresher. Then we'll launch into today's session. So first of all, just keep in mind these sessions are for you. We want to make sure that you get value out of them. You're getting your questions answered and walking away with some knowledge that you didn't have prior to joining us. As far as format goes for these sessions, if this is your first time here, we typically kick off with a quick presentation from our teams. There's a set of topics that I've actually added to the community post for this event. So you can see all the upcoming session topics that we have planned. That list is subject to change. We're going to reserve that right, but hopefully it gives you an idea of kind of what's coming, and you can plan for upcoming sessions and which topics look interesting to you. After those presentations, each session will transition to a open Q&A session where we'll kind of go around the room and get questions answered for folks. So feel free to just listen in, kind of soak up the knowledge, but it's your opportunity to get your questions answered. So feel free to throw those into the mix as needed. Everyone does have the ability to go off mute and ask questions, but I'm going to ask that if you're not currently speaking, please try and remain muted so you're not interrupting the presenter or other participants. You also have the ability to use the text chat in Zoom if you prefer to ask your questions that way. Just ask that you make sure you address the question to everyone as opposed to an individual presenter. We've got a few folks from the team who are monitoring that chat queue and answering questions as the presenters going through their session. And some of these questions, just keep in mind, we can't always get super specific on something that might be related to just your instance or a particular configuration. So we'll do our best to get that question answered, but we might ask you to raise an incident on high and try and follow up offline afterwards instead. And there should be a little blinking cursor in the corner of your screen indicating that these meetings are being recorded. So if you're not comfortable with that or your organization isn't comfortable with that, please go ahead and sign off now. And speaking of those recordings, we have been posting them all to a YouTube playlist after each session occurs. So you can find an archive of all of the previous sessions. If there's some that you missed or you just want to go back and reference something that you couldn't quite remember, you have access to all of those. The last point for me here, today we're talking specifically about performance analytics. Would also love for you to join us tomorrow. We have a broadcast event, so you can find details on the ServiceNow.com website and go ahead and register for it. We're going to be covering everything that's new in the New York release across all of the different products and business lines here at ServiceNow. And if you just can't get enough of my voice, you can tune into the platform spotlight session and hear me talk about everything that's new for platform, including performance analytics. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Eric to walk us through some of the new contents that we're shipping out of the box in New York. So Eric, over to you.
Thanks, Tom. And let me start sharing. All right, got it now?
Yes, perfect.
Awesome. Sorry for that. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Zernhelt. I am part of a team of folks on the outbound product management team for performance analytics and reporting. And we are responsible for a lot, or getting the out-of-box content that is delivered through numerous means to you that will allow you to see some of the immediate value that you can out of your applications. I'll go over some of that first, and then we will go into what's available in New York. I'm not going to go too deep into what is available in New York. I'm going to show you pretty much everything. Our intention is that over the coming weeks, we can deep dive into some of those in a couple of sessions. If and however you might show some interest, we can actually make that part of these office hours and spend 5-10 minutes in some of those content packs that are generating some interest. So starting off, I'll be going into what we actually kind of do here and what some of the story behind the content packs. So I kind of touched on this already, but basically our out-of-box solutions, what we call content packs internally, are packages that are available to you as soon as you install an application. Sometimes they're installed separately, sometimes they're embedded into the application. But the idea is that if you get the application, you will also, without any extra cost, have access to the analytics that are most appropriate for that application. In some cases, our solutions or out-of-box content packs are going to be entirely report-based, and that'll be in support of, say, customers that have a kind of a standard, first pass at analytics or standard reporting within their environment. And then for the more mature customers that have invested a fair bit into their analytics strategy, we have off-the-shelf KPIs built on performance analytics. So, touching on that, we've got a mix of dashboards. Some of those will have performance analytics components as part of them, as much as possible. And if you've been following the content pack evolution, you'll notice that we've gone far more persona-based over the recent releases. The idea being that you're coming in with a mission in mind. You shouldn't have to be hopping all over your different various dashboards to find what you're looking for. We do have, and I'll share some deeper numbers in a couple of minutes, but we do have already available to you over 1,000 KPIs that are delivered out of box, and actually over 2,000 reports that are available. And I also mentioned that, it's not just dashboards. Some of what we are delivering and some of what I'll be mentioning as new in New York include what we call the embedded analytics. Some of these are inform analytics. Some of these are as part of service portals. Some of them are part of workspaces. But I did mention that we are delivering as much as possible based around personas. And for the most part, I think this aligns well to the story that we've been sharing with you all over the past couple of years around our different personas and how analytics should be focused or can be focused and help drive the business appropriately. This ends up being part of our internal conversation when we are reviewing solutions to make sure that that the outcome, the product that we deliver, is going to be of the most value to our customers, to you all. So to give you an idea of what we've been delivering, we've actually been looking at mostly, and you can tell that on the left by the kind of the greenish colors. For the most part, we deliver out-of-box dashboards, and that is what is traditionally in your dashboards list, typically grouped by dashboard groups. But you'll see that we are growing in our workspace areas, and that is, as that workspace paradigm evolves, we will be seeing more and more content there. On the right, you can also see that we've been, the content is spread across our different businesses, our different application types. And, for the most part, we were seeing a pretty even spread of interest and growth in each of those areas. I do want to mention again, and I've kind of hinted at this, but these numbers, if you're going down the list and counting the plugins, it's not going to line up perfectly because we do include in our delivery these bundled analytics, whether it be a dashboard that's included as a part of an out-of-box off-the-shelf application, or if it's embedded in, say, a new workspace. I don't mean to go too deep into these, but I did want to give you an idea of just how much is out there. We've got over 70 content packs that are available as a mix of plugins and add-ons. You can see here that that's made up of, these numbers are around the New York timeframe. I wouldn't commit to these being precise because I think some of these might be have grown since New York went GA, but these are close. So you can see that we've got over 180 dashboards and and over 2,000 reports, as I mentioned before. The main message here that I want to stress is that before you go and spend any time building a new report or building a new KPI and performance analytics, come and check out the documentation, and I'll include a link to that at the end that we can share. But the idea is that chances are it's been built already, and you shouldn't have to worry about wrestling with your tables and your queries on day one. You should be able to get something that provides some immediate value that you can then grow on from that point. To give you an idea of some of the indicator growth, what we've been releasing, you can see we've got in this view, and I want to call out that we are not including some of the benchmarks, KPIs that are included in your instances, and some of the things that have been released over the store over the last couple of releases. But what you'll see here is that, again, we're approaching 1,000 or almost 900 indicators that are available to you, with 132-ish delivered in the New York timeframe. One other thing that I want to call out while I'm here is that, I did mention that the store release isn't included here, but it is something that we are monitoring. It is part of our pipeline. And as we get into the actual list of what is brand new in New York, and this is the full list of it, you'll see that several of these have been called out as store releases, particularly in the security area and risk. And we are seeing more of a store-based delivery where we want different types of content packs for different types of audit models or compliance models. We do want to give customers their information as quickly as possible and keep it current. The store is seen as a more appropriate avenue for them. And I'm expecting to see more and more of that as our content evolves. And I think pretty much the other thing that I would call out here is that we've got some of the embedded stuff. So if you're going to go looking for, say, starting at the top here, vendor performance metrics, that is an embedded thing. It's part of a workspace delivery. I think we're seeing more of that in New York, as I've mentioned before. And I think that for the rest of these, what you're going to want to do is check our documentation site for links, and I've got a sample of that on the next slide, where you can go and explore some of the content itself. You can see some samples of as much as possible, particularly with the recent and new content. We have been getting a little bit of a richer documentation model where we share what are the target personas, some of the new and interesting KPIs. So I do suggest that you go and explore that. This is just a screenshot from the documentation site, so I expect you can find that on your own to give you an idea. The list is far longer than this. But I wanted to rest here for a bit just so that you guys have a chance to get an idea of what is actually available to you in New York.
This is new.
End of the show. Questions?
This is new in content in New York. There was new stuff in Madrid as well. So if you're, this is not the complete list. This is just what was added.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. I did show that one slide earlier that showed our growth over time, like the complete list of content. It grows about, like I said, 150 to 180 KPIs per release. See, there's a bunch of comments. Any questions that I need to address?
No, I think you're okay with the chat, or
Okay.
some other questions in the chat. So I think, Eric, thank you for the overview. Appreciate it. And I just want to reiterate that before you start any new project, make sure you go look in the documentation to see what's there. There is some great information about what's in each of these content packs, but go to CSM, go to ITAM, go to ITSM, and you'll see what's available for that application, for that solution, and all the content packs that come with it. And also take a look at the storage. You can see SecOps and GRC are heavy in the store, but some of the other ones you'll see showing up there as well. Start with the content packs, review what's there. Even if it doesn't get you 100% of what you want, which it might, it might get you 90% of the way there. And it's going to save you a lot of time and give your users the best information that's available. And hopefully we'll post these slides up shortly, which will have the link. But if you search for out-of-the-box solutions in the doc site, it'll come right up. Okay, thank you, Eric. I know that you had to jump. Thank you for taking the time this morning. And I think now,
thanks everyone.
And now Maya, who's one of our product managers from Amsterdam, is going to give us an overview of one of the other new features and enhanced features in New York, Spotlight. You're still on mute, Amaya.
Okay.
There we go.
Hello? Okay. Yep. Sorry about that. Was the mute on the Zoom itself was unmuted. Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay. Right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay.
We're seeing PowerPoint.
Cool. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Today I will be spending some time going over the Spotlight feature. So I've divided my demo in two parts. So first we will spend some time understanding what Spotlight feature is and why do you need it. And then we will look into the enhancements that we have done for New York. So essentially, Spotlight feature within PA helps you to, as the name suggests, Spotlight, it helps you to illuminate what's most important for your business to focus on. So the key persona that this feature is targeted towards is the agent. So if you take an agent in your enterprise, they are always inundated with a lot of incidents, problems, and records, and they always do not know which ones to pick. Of course, there's P1s and P2s that are exceptions because no matter what, they always get picked up first. But for all the other records that they need to focus on, they don't really have a good way to figure out which one should be picked up next. So for example, if the decision hinges between a P3 and a P4, if you look at the conventional wisdom, you would say that they would pick P3, but that may not be true in all the cases. So for example, consider you have a P3 and a P4. The P3 came in yesterday, but the P4 has been sitting in the queue for, let's say, a month. And because it was P4, when it came in, nobody looked at it because, it's P4, so it's not really important. So it was kind of like set aside. But what's happening now is it's accumulating your, age numbers, and it's impacting your SLA. So the person or the caller who submitted that P4 hasn't actually received any service on that yet. And that's not a good outcome for any enterprise looking to improve their CSAT scores. So with Spotlight, your agents essentially get a ranked list that you configure based on the conditions that are most important to you, and they basically use the list to pick the records that they need to work on. Some another example that you can look at is, let's say, for HR. Let's say your organization is expanding in a new region, and that means that they're hiring a lot of new people in that region. And although your hope would be to have a smooth onboarding, chances are that there could be some cases coming in related to onboarding in that region. And you want your HR service centers to be focused in that area, because you want to deliver a great experience for all the new employees. So you could create a spotlight list with your conditions that bump those cases higher in the list for the agent to work on. To understand how it works, I will use an analogy from our daily life. So let's say everybody's familiar with this particular scenario. So anytime you want to book a flight, so let's say I want to go from Amsterdam to Sydney, I have a lot of decisions to make, right? So of course I need to check my fares, my budget, my choice of airlines, a departure and arrival time, whether I want to go direct, whether I want to go stopover, do I want to avoid certain stopovers, do I want the shortest flight or the longest flight, and so on. So, but wouldn't it be nice if I could just book a flight, right away? Because if the system knows what my criteria are and what's most important to me, so any system would, if I have a system that essentially does all the work for me, then my life is pretty easy. I just have to, click on the book button and I'm done. So, I mean, if only like all the travel companies have some sort of a scoring mechanism where they understand my criteria and rank them based on what's important to me, then I can easily select a winner. So in this case, for example, let's say I picked this one because it met all the criteria that's important to me, and immediately I don't have to worry about any other choices. I directly book this flight and my work is done. So Spotlight similarly works in the same way. So it basically takes out the guesswork from the agents. So when you run the Spotlight collection job, it evaluates your records based on the conditions that you have specified in the criteria, and all, the records get a score. So all the records then are compared against the threshold, and any record that whose score is more than the threshold is essentially considered a Spotlight record. So all those records would then be would then form your Spotlight list, which you can share with your agents, and then they really just have to look at the list and start addressing those incidents and problems. And basically they have they can work on the things that are important for the business. They never lose track of like those forgotten P4s and P5s. And also, ultimately, they don't have to rely on multiple reports and dashboards to figure out what do they need to work on next. And for New York, we've added a functionality where you can copy a configuration for a Spotlight group and copy it over to either breakdown elements or domains. So two distinct use cases here. So let's say your enterprise has a lot of assignment groups, but then you want the agents that are part of that assignment or part of each assignment group to work towards the same business outcome. Now, previously, what you had to do was you had to create a base Spotlight group and then manually create the copies, or just do an insert and stay and use the breakdown element so that you can control your assignment groups that way. Or if you're an MSP, if you want to apply the same conditions across the companies that you support, again, you would have to individually go into those domains and create a Spotlight group from scratch and then copy over all the conditions. And it was not very user-friendly, and there was a lot of room for confusion, and of course, there's a lot of manual and tedious work. So what we have done in New York is added a couple of UI actions that would basically easily copy an entire Spotlight group along with all of its config, scheduling over to either breakdown elements or domain. We also give you a nice flexible way to name the copies. So either you can add your element name or domain name as a suffix or a prefix. You can also pick up a new name, or you can keep the existing name as the source Spotlight group. To enable this feature, we've added new roles. So there's a PA Spotlight copy breakdown role. This allows you to use the copy breakdown UI action, which I will show in the demo. This particular role is contained within the PA Spotlight role. For the copy domain UI, there's another separate role, and this one you need to assign separately because not everybody is using domain separation. In case anything goes wrong, we have also provided troubleshooting logs, so you can easily analyze what went wrong and take corrective actions. Those logs also are restricted based on those roles, so not everybody can see all the logs. So any user who has just the breakdown role can only see those logs. With that, I'm going to jump into the demo. Okay, so like I said, I'll briefly go over the Spotlight functionality in general as an overview, and then we will look into the enhancements. So I think most of you were part of the office hours that was held in February, where we took a deeper dive into the Spotlight. So this will be a quick refresher for all of you, and for the new people, it's also a chance to understand how Spotlight works. It's pretty straightforward. So you have the Spotlight group. Everything you configure goes on here. You have to, so the first thing you do is you select an indicator, which basically tells the Spotlight group which facts table to evaluate on. So in this case, my Spotlight group is based on number of open incidents, which means it's going to evaluate the incidents table. You specify your conditions. So based on your business goals, you can specify which kind of incidents need to be evaluated, and you can assign weights to each of those conditions. There are two ways for you to do it. Either you can do a simple query. So in this case, let's say this one is a simple query where any incident whose description is empty is going to get a score of 100. But you can also select an indicator. So let's say, so you can then use an indicator as a criteria itself, and then use the breakdown. Let's say in this case, I want to say my P4s have a weight of 1. So once you define all this, by the way, this one is delivered out of the box. So this is what we ship out of the box. But of course, you are free to either completely delete it or create new criteria based on your business scenarios. Then you have a threshold. So like I mentioned, when the Spotlight job runs, it's going to evaluate all the incident records, and it's going to compare those records with these conditions, and any record that meets this condition is going to get a score. Ultimately, all the scores are added for that particular record, because one record can satisfy more than one condition. So for each record, their individual score is compared against the threshold. Any record whose score is more than the threshold is considered a Spotlight record. And so let's quickly take a look into that. So I'm going to just execute the job, and I should have so my job has run, and I've got 36 Spotlight incidents that were evaluated, and then I can basically then share this list with my agents. I can also do an interactive analysis where I can quickly see a nice visual of all my Spotlight records, and I can also share this with my agents. So this way, this is the list that they can basically work off of. So all the intelligence, all the thought process that the business wants them to do is already done for them. So they don't have to worry about, okay, which ones do I need to pick? They simply can look at the Spotlight list and start working off that. Okay, so coming to the enhancements. So let's say you have this Spotlight group and you want to kind of use the same criteria for multiple assignment groups. So what you could do is, so you will see this copy to breakdown element. This is a new UI action. So if you click on this, you will get this pop-up, and you can decide how you want to control the name. So I like to use the new names as a suffix. So let's see. So let's see, I want to do the assignment group. Let's do service desk, and let's do software. Okay. So yeah. So basically, it has copied the complete configuration of the source Spotlight group into these new Spotlight groups that are now configured and broken down by assignment group of service desk and software. A couple of points to keep in mind here. The copies will be deactivated by default, and we did that because we don't want them to suddenly start running. So we advise you to take a look at this, make sure the scheduling looks okay, and you can obviously change the schedule, and then ultimately you can activate the copies. Similarly, for the domain separated use case, you can just use the copy to domain UI action, and then in this case, you will basically get the list of domains, and then the system would copy a source Spotlight group and make copies based on each domain. You can look at the logs. So we have a new module here, Spotlight group copy logs. So if I go into this, here you have detailed information on what went on behind the scenes. So you can see that I requested copies for 2 breakdown elements, and then this was my result that both of the copies were created successfully. And this also gives additional information on each of the steps that occurred during the copy. And you also have a link to directly go to the copies from here. So again, a nice way for you to quickly see the list of copied records. Yep, and that wraps up my demo. So are there any questions?
So we do have a question about entitlement, and Spotlight is not restricted, is restricted or is driven by an indicator, correct? So as long as you have an indicator created, you can run Spotlight on that indicator, start with that indicator.
Yes, and so the main indicator basically enables you to run Spotlight on only on the facts table that the main indicator is built on. So you are restricted to only use that facts table. So any query or any indicator criteria has to have the same facts table.
And so the entitlement for Spotlight goes along with the entitlement for performance analytics. So if I have CSM Pro, but not ITSM Pro, I'd only be able to create indicators on CSM data, but not ITSM, and Spotlight would follow along with that.
Correct.
And then we have another question. If you can talk about this, can we add Spotlight within a dashboard?
Yes, so you can. So we have interactive analyses, and we also ship out-of-the-box dashboard along with the out-of-the-box Spotlight solutions. But yeah, you can, if you have to create a new one, you can also add a widget that basically the report widget that is based on the database view that the Spotlight group creates.
So just
yes,
like
you can.
Just like there's incident metrics, incident SLA, it's Spotlight, incident Spotlight or Spotlight incident.
Yes, so I can show real quick.
So we ship an out of the box dashboard. Which
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, this is an incident Spotlight dashboard, and it looks very similar to the interactive analyses. But yeah, this one has your oops. Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, so we do ship out-of-the-box dashboards with each of the Spotlight solutions.
And there is another related question of can we use a scorecard widget with Spotlight content? You want to talk about that? About using performance analytics on Spotlight? Out of the box, the Spotlight data all goes into a table, which any report then can run on. But which would also allow you to create indicators on Spotlight, correct? On the Spotlight data. If I wanted to trend that 36, I could build an indicator on that.
Theoretically, you can, and we haven't actually tried it. So, but in theory, yes, you can. So we can definitely give it a shot and get back to the community.
I have seen it done. So at the end of the day, the data is all in a table. You can do anything you can do with the table. So just like whatever you can do with metrics, whatever you can do with SLAs, you can do with the results of Spotlight as well. There's no special magic behind it once that score is written. And one feature I don't know if I saw you click on it. Can you click on one of those 370s?
Okay.
The score. So one of the things I think is important too, as you look at it, is that not only do you see that this incident is scored a 370, but it actually shows you why, which I find to be very helpful to understand what those contributing factors are. It's not each incident is more than a number. There's something that's triggering. So you can do analysis about why your Spotlight is triggering what's happening more and less often. So there's just a wealth of information here to help you understand how to tune your process and where your weak spots are and where you can go back and improve the UI, improve the business rules, improve the workflows so that nothing gets lit up. Right? That at the end of the day, that's the goal, is that you don't have anything in Spotlight because your process is tuned exactly the way it needs to be. One more, there's a few more questions having to do with Spotlight scores. So the question is, Spotlight scores are only valid as often as the last job. Do we have a recommendation how often we should run the Spotlight job?
Yes, so the Spotlight scores are evaluated every time the job runs. So previous scores will be kind of overwritten. So every time each run will recalculate the scores, and you will have new scores every single time. So as far as recommendation, I think it depends on your use cases, but I think once a day should be sufficient to begin with. I know we've had discussions where certain customers wanted to run them more often because they want to capture anything that came in, like at this moment. So that's also possible. So in that case, you may want to have it run maybe once an hour. But I think that you'll have to evaluate how what kind of volume you're getting, and So I think, but I think the best practice would be to just do once a day.
And it does rely, if you're using indicator, you're using the indicator source, and you're using the indicator, if you're using indicators as the spotlight criteria, that data is only updated once a day generally. So you need to make sure that if you were running it more frequently, that your underlying jobs are updating more frequently. Otherwise, you're going to run it multiple times and get the same result every time. It is not real time. The jobs do need to run. So it's something you wouldn't want to just mindlessly set to 5 minutes. And
you also have an option to evaluate from the PA snapshots. So in the Spotlight group config, you have an option to either evaluate as of based on platform data or the snapshot. So definitely, if you pick the snapshot option, you have to make sure that your Spotlight job is scheduled after the PA jobs have run. So
Okay, let's see the next question. There's a question about this a speedometer type widget to be able to show the ranked value for a visual. I'm not sure what that's, if that is a question or just a comment that about some other improved visuals. If you want to reply back into that about using the speedometer widget. The next question I see is unrelated to Spotlight, so you can wipe the sweat off now. So there's a question about dashboard access, which I believe dashboard access is one of our future topics in a little later this year. But the question is, how can I give access to a dashboard for users and customers who only have SNC external, so they don't have an internal role? The dashboard's been shared correctly, and we've tried to, and we've modified the multiple ACLs on the tables, tabs, security constraints. So when it comes down to it with the dashboard access, if we're hitting security constraints, that sounds like it's ACLs on the base tables. So charts should be okay. Any graphical report should be okay without those ACLs. This does get into some debugging, and we'll get into it in more detail, but in a future session. The quick answer is can the user see the dashboard at all, or is the dashboard blocked? That's the first thing I want to look at. The second is looking at the dashboard, do they get everything back saying security constraints? So if it's the first that they can't view, the dashboard is blocked, there shouldn't be roles on there. I think what we would have to do, though, is not have any roles on the dashboard required.
Adam?
Yeah.
Hi, Adam. This is Shukran. I think, I'm from support. Hi, everyone. So I think I may know what now Praveen already explained. The dashboard is blocked. It's not the content of the dashboard, but the user doesn't have access even to the dashboard. There are a few ACLs, yes. Praveen, do you have a ticket raised with support? If you don't, please do raise a ticket. We will figure it out. But there is today, because we had another case where the dashboard is shared with a user who has SNC external role, but there is an ACL for the UI page ACL on the PA dashboard, which prevents them going to that URL. So when the user copy-pastes the PA dashboard URL, they get the security constraint message. nothing else. As if they are going to the table, as if they are going to a table, they don't have access and they get this message because of the ACL. Yes, can you please raise a ticket, because sometimes it can be different per instance, so we can investigate it.
So the one thing I would add in is just make sure that you do have the dashboard shared with that user. So that user, even if you don't have a role, is shared with that user or a group that user's in, regardless of role. If it is shared with that user and the user still can't get to it, definitely you want to raise a case on high so we can get that resolved for you.
Yes, please, Praveen, please raise a case so we can have a look, and we will have a look and figure out what's wrong. Thank you.
There's a couple questions, and just one to follow up about the SNC external. SNC external is a role. I believe you have to activate a plugin. I do not know if it is activated on install now. For older customers, you'd have to activate it. Which SNC external is a role that says this customer doesn't have a role. There's two. If you search for that exact string SNC_external in the docs, it'll come in and explain it better than I will. But ostensibly, there are two roles that get created with the activation of this plugin: SNC external and SNC internal. Which basically means anybody who has a role, anybody who doesn't have a role. And they actually get a role that says they do or they don't have a role. But that's how you can specifically say anybody who doesn't have a role can see this. And somebody who does have, you can require any role to see something else. It doesn't consume a license because it's specifically saying I don't have a license. Anuj, you have your question about the dashboard filters. That is one that might be a little bit easier to look at if we can see it. What I'd recommend for that, and I see there are a couple of suggestions in there, if you can post something in the community with some screenshots about what you're seeing and you can blur out what needs to be blurred out, some of us might be able to take a look at that and help you out, point you some directions. And I'll make the plug for the community that I make every office hours. We're here in person every other week, but the community is there 24/7, and there are lots of ServiceNow people, a lot of partners, and a lot of really knowledgeable customers who answer those questions. And you might be able to get a question answered in minutes rather than waiting for 2 weeks from now. And particularly something where you're having a problem with the configuration, post a couple screenshots, explain what you're trying to do, and you should get a wide array of responses of things to try and things to look at to help you get done what you need to get done. And another question about the SNC external about PA dashboards. So about dashboards. Dashboards are part of the platform. So having, I don't believe you'll be exposed to any licensing issues on granting a user access to a dashboard. So SNC, if you granted a dashboard SNC external to that role, everybody should be okay. If you have any licensing questions, the best answer is always to talk to your account executive to clarify. There's most customers are on standard contracts, but in case you are on some custom contract or there's some language that you negotiated, I'm not privy to all of that. So you would always want to ask your AE if you have a licensing question, and they'll get the right answer for you specifically that applies to your contract. And Anuj, actually, you just answered the question, or you helped me give him the information to answer the question. There was a question about a breakdown not being applied to a PA chart. It's applying to reports, I believe, but not to the chart. And it has to do with a heat map. A heat map already has 2 breakdowns applied. So selecting a third one, it's just not applied. So a dashboard breakdown, the setup for this is that there's a dashboard breakdown where you can select the element that you want to filter to. That filters all of the PA components and can act as an interactive filter if you set it that way. But if you already have 2 breakdowns apply, a third one will not be applied. So that hits in a certain pivot reports. So if I were in a heat map, there's already an X and Y axis. So that's 2 of my breakdowns. I can't apply a third. The same happens if I have a single score that's already applying 2 breakdowns. I can't just apply a third to it. It just will ignore what's going on. So you do need to be aware of when you're asking it for a third breakdown. And the heat map, I don't have a great solution. Many of the other things, you can just create an indicator that gets what you want. So often, like with P1s, I'll create a separate indicator on P1s so that I can really slice and dice into what's going on with my P1s. Whereas I'll have my general indicator that breaks down by priority, because my P2s and P4s are not as important as focusing in and getting a third level breakdown into P1s. But heat map, I think you're stuck for the time being. Okay, we are wrapping up in time. I'm hoping that we answered all the questions, or I told you blatantly I'm going to ignore you and follow up in the community. If you have, if there's any other questions, we do have a couple of minutes. We can answer them, so you can post them. You can come off mute and talk about them. You can post them in chat, and we'll try to answer those. And if not, we can wrap up a couple minutes early. As a reminder, this recording will get posted to the YouTube channel shortly, hopefully later today. And we'll try to get the presentations that you saw posted to a community post as well, so you can reference those. I posted the link to the out-of-the-box solutions in the chat if you want to scroll up and get to it. But if you type in out-of-the-box performance analytics solutions, you'll see a bunch of results come up. There is one link that has a list of everything, but then in every solution in GRC, in ITOM, you'll find a section that has what are the performance analytics solutions for that solution there. So you can get to it multiple ways. And then Spotlight, if you look at the documentation for Spotlight, particularly in New York, you'll see all those enhancements as well. Also in the post for office hours, you will see that we added in the topics, the planned topics for the next, for the rest of the year. So the next 3 months, 4 months. Go ahead and take a look at those. That's what we plan to do. It's subject to change if something comes up. But that's what we plan to talk about, so you can plan your attendance accordingly. Hopefully they're all valuable for everybody, but you'll see a little bit of variation between some things that are really easy, some things that are a little bit more complicated. And actually, we'll add a slide about that as well, so that as you come here, you'll see it. I have a question about what are the hierarchies. Hierarchies in PA is how do you build and structure hierarchies and handle n levels of management, n locations, levels of location. How do I roll up my PA data? We'll be talking about that in one of the future sessions. I don't have the date in front of me right now. But again, we have those sessions in there, plan accordingly, invite your friends. They'll be posted in the recordings that'll go along with it. We're here to answer your questions. That the community is here 24/7 to answer your questions. And I think with that, we're going to be ready to wrap up. One last call for questions. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and end the meeting. And thank you guys for coming. Hopefully you got something out of this.